anything to do with you, all right, then answer me this, Mr. Wizard. Why is it that an ancient Egyptian pyramid appears on the money that you use every day? And what is that thing doing on our money? What's that doing there? No one has ever been able to give me an adequate answer about that, you know? Good morning. Stevie the Guide here on the banks of the Guadalupe River in Kerrville, Texas. And I hope you're feeling good. If you're awake at all at 5 o'clock in the morning, it is 5 o'clock once again. And I'm excited to say that this is episode number 80. My goal was to reach 100 of these hours on this live stream. And I got the notion that it would change my life. And guess what? It is changing my life. And as I go to this mental gym, this trying to bring it, it is changing me. And I got 20 more to reach my goal of 100. And then I don't know what I'm going to do. All right. But I keep going and going, just like the ever-ready bunny. I have quit. Any of you who have been watching this for a while know that I have quit for 2 or 3 weeks at a stretch, but I keep coming back, and every time I do this, I get a little better and I get a little less fearful of sharing my heart openly and authentically with you. And I don't know where it's going to lead, but it's causing a shift in me, and I've gotten a lot of encouragement from a lot of you people, and I appreciate it very much. And so I'm not going to quit. That's the upshot of today. I'm not going to give up. All right, I'm not going to give up, and at least not until 100. And then it's got to go on from there. Now that I'm used to doing this, I think I would miss it terribly if I didn't just keep going. But we will see. I'm just trying to reach my goal of 100 hours on live stream. And my hope is that in some small, clumsy way, that I can raise the vibration of this planet another notch, all right? Raise the vibration, the consciousness, bring about a balance between the left and right brain. But part of the reason I do this is just to get my right brain working, my intuitive side flowing, and not be stuck in that fearful left brain logical, that default mode of thinking. And bringing about a balance, bringing up that heart energy that is infectious in the world. And I believe that if more of us do that, it's going to cause a chain reaction in vibration. It's going to up the frequency, just like my daddy listening to the radio, the AM radio, trying to get the Rice football game. At some point, we're bound to change this channel of consciousness and reach another level. The second coming of Christ consciousness is what I believe, but we have to try. And sometimes there's major obstacles. And I love the immortal Les Brown, and I got a quote from him. Les Brown says, "It's not over until you win." All right, it's not over until you win. And Les Brown, you might remember, Les Brown has this great story. He's a motivational speaker of the highest order. And Les Brown talks about how he had this dream to be a radio DJ. And of course, now Les Brown is a famous motivational speaker, has his own radio show, and it's a big deal. But back in the day, Les just had a dream. And he went down to the local radio station and talked to Mr. Smith, the station manager. Brown, I want to be a DJ here and work at the station. Mr. Smith says, no, kid, go away. We don't need anybody. So he says, yes, sir. And he comes back the next day and says, hi, Mr. Smith, I'm Les Brown, and I want to blah, blah, blah. And he goes, yeah, kid, I told you yesterday, we don't have any jobs here. And Les says, well, yes, sir, I know, but I just want to make sure that nobody died or got fired in the last 24 hours. And he goes, no, get out of here. All right. So Les Brown says, yes, sir. He comes back the next day and the next and says, good morning, Mr. Smith. I'm Les Brown, and I'm looking for a job. And the guy finally says, look, go get me some coffee. All right. And so Les, the next thing you know, Les is cleaning the floors at nighttime in the radio station. And all of a sudden, Les is becoming indispensable to these people in whatever way he can, right? But he's preparing, he's gearing up for his moment. I talked about breakthroughs just yesterday, the day before. And Les's moment of breakthrough was when the station manager called him up and said, hey, Les, Joe, the DJ, got drunk last night and he can't come in. He goes, yes, sir, I know. And he goes, is there anybody else that can come in? He was like, nope, there isn't. I've called everyone. He goes, okay, Les, can you go in there and just work the turntable, put on the records, don't say anything. And he was like, I can do that, sir. And he goes, okay, go ahead and do it. And he hangs up the phone and he goes, that guy must think I'm crazy. And he goes into first he calls up his mother. He says, Mom, tell everybody to turn on the radio because I'm going to be on in about 10 minutes. And then he has this whole speech prepared. And he turns it on. I'm Les Brown, the latest and the greatest, the one and only, blah, blah, blah. He has the whole spiel laid out. And they were impressed. He had his moment. He was prepared. And bang, he had a breakthrough. And Les Brown, he's cool. But Les Brown's quote of the day is, it's not over until you win. All right. And I like that because, and my metaphor today takes me all the way back to 1980. In 1980, for those of you who were alive back then, and remember, 1980 was a tremendous heat wave that hit this country, really super hot. And fortunately for me, I was working for Fairfield Industries up in Alaska in 1980. I was 21 years old. And all summer from May until about the end of July, I was working up in Alaska. It was even later than that. Anyway, I got home, it was screaming hot outside. And there was nothing to do and nowhere to go. And I was supposed to go back to college in September up in Austin. But I had almost a whole month, 3 or 4 weeks, where I had nothing to do. And my friend calls me up. What's his name? Doug Dubendorf calls me up. Hello, Doug, if you're out there somewhere. I hadn't seen you since 1980. Doug calls me up from Phoenix and he says, hey man, why don't you come on over if you got nothing to do? I got nothing to do, and we can hang out and do nothing together. And I got this, notion that would be more fun than hanging out in Houston, doing nothing. And so I fly over to Phoenix, and if I thought it was hot in Texas, baby, I might as well have been living, in the mountains, because compared to Houston, Texas, Phoenix, Arizona was like moving to Saudi Arabia. All right. I mean, it must have been 125 or 30 outside. It was the most screaming hot environment that I think I've ever felt. And Doug doesn't have a car, and he's staying with his mom in this townhome, or it was kind of a little duplex thing. It had a yard, and in a vacant lot next door, and a swimming pool down the street. And it was so hot outside, ladies and gentlemen, that we really couldn't go outside. I mean, even if we wanted to walk somewhere, we couldn't, as it was so unbelievably hot. The only thing we could do is walk down, about a block to the swimming pool and jump in the water, right? And then walk back to the house. We couldn't do anything until that sun started going down because it was so hot. I mean, and so, we're hanging around doing nothing, and Doug's really, not got anything going on over there. And I look out in the vacant lot next door under this tree, and there's an old car, an old Ford Mustang with flat tires and scorched paint, and the old vinyl top on the top of this thing is all peeled up, and I mean, it is sun beaten, and it's not even really a tree it's parked under. It's been cooked by the sun, and it looks pretty forlorn out there. It's old, it's like a 68 or 69 Ford Mustang. And I asked Doug about the third day I'm there. I said, Doug, what's the deal with that car? And he said, oh, that car's dead. It's gone. And I said, well, what's wrong? When was the last time it drove? And he said, well, I think it was over a year ago, and it's fried, man. It's, don't even think about it. And I said, well, what happened? I started, and he didn't even know. And Doug knew less about cars than I did. And so I asked his mother, and his mother said that the transmission was blown, and that there were other problems, and it was just too much to deal with. And so she just parked it out there. And she got herself a new car, which is often what happens with people who don't know anything about cars and are unwilling to fix them. I've learned this from a lot of my Hispanic geniuses who take older cars and turn them into wonderful transportation. Anyway, so I started becoming curious about the car, and I started looking at it. I went and opened the hood, and it looked dusty, and it had a wasp nest in it, okay? And I mean, it was so hot inside that car that you had to open the doors and let it breathe for a while before you could even stick your head in it. It was unbelievably hot, and the seats were all cracked and stuff because it'd been out in the weather. And so, I turned the key, and, nothing happened. And so I said, well, I'm going to call up my friend Grant and see what he says. So I call up Houston, and my friend Grant was a whiz mechanic back when we were in our 20s. This guy, really, when we were teenagers, Grant was turning wrenches on, his, he had a Trans Am, and he had another friend who had a Camaro, and we were over at his house all the time looking at those cars, and Grant says, okay, you got to be kind of a scientist, and this is really one of the ways that I learned about cars. I had an old 1970 Grand Prix, and I had to learn a lot about cars just owning that car, which was a really good education for me, even though it was a hassle at the time. But Grant says, okay, go and get another car and charge up the battery because it's probably dead, and start with that. And so we do that, and it doesn't start. I call up Grant. He says, okay, check all the connections, wiggle the posts and tighten down the posts on the battery and the starter and everything. Maybe pour a Coca-Cola onto the battery cables. And so we do that. And hey, we got nothing better to do anyway, right? And so we mess around with that battery, and sure enough, we get the car to start turning it over, but it will not start. And he goes, okay, go down to the auto parts store and get yourself a bottle of that squirt stuff, that ether, starter fluid, and take off the air cover, where the air filter is, and squirt it down in there, and then try to start the car. And because it's probably got bad gas and it's been sitting, it's all gummed out. So we do that, and sure enough, we did that a couple of times. Turns over, and starts up. And he tells us to put fresh gasoline in the tank. all of a sudden we're like, hey, it's alive, And he said, make sure there's oil in it, make sure there's water in the radiator and all that. And the radiator leaks badly, all right? But we got the motor running. We're like, it was like, Dr. Frankenstein when the monster comes to life, but he's not moving yet, but the heart is beating, and so the motor's running. And so I said, man, the water pump's leaking bad. I call up Grant again. I'm calling this guy about, 4 or 5 times a day from Phoenix to Houston. And Grant says, okay, don't change the water pump. He said, go down to the auto parts store, which fortunately for us, that auto parts store was a short walk, and it was open until like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So we could cruise down there when it wasn't too hot. Doug's mother went to work early and she came back late, so we never had transportation, and I was dying to see this thing run. So we get it. And then we had to get... they had a little air, one of those little air compressor things, a little small one that you could fill up the tires with. So we borrowed that from the auto parts store. We fill up the tires. We pour this stop leak stuff into the radiator, and it slowed down the leaks a lot. And so we're getting this thing better and better. And there was this climate of anticipation, And so we put the thing in gear. And it doesn't go anywhere, nothing. Forward, reverse, nothing. It's dead. It's alone, right? And so he says, okay, here's what you're going to have to do. He taught me how to get the thing up on blocks. We went back down to the auto parts store and we borrowed some ramps from this guy. And we had to have these other guys come with what did we do? I guess we pushed that car up onto these blocks. We had a couple of guys that came and helped us, and we managed to push the car up onto these ramps where you could get up under it. And then Grant, I'm talking to him. This is like major brain surgery, right? Step by step, we're going through and we undo the bolts and undo the linkage, and I can't get it out. So I'm calling Grant. I'm all greasy. What do I do now? His mother's phone in the house was all greasy and dirty after we got finished with it because we came in with our greasy hands. We're calling Grant over in Houston. And we can't work on this thing in the middle of the day. It's so hot outside. We have to do it in the evening. And fortunately, his mother was at work until like 10 o'clock at night. And so anyway, we get the transmission out of this Ford Mustang, and we get a guy to help us haul it down to the junkyard. A brand new one was out of the question because we didn't have the money. But we take it down to the junkyard. Grant tells us, find a junkyard, take it down there, and you trade the old one in, and you get a discount on not a new one, but a rebuilt one. And so we get it, and it cost like $150 back then once we had the trade in. And so we bring it back and we shove it into this car and we pour in this transmission fluid and voila, the thing, you put it in drive and it rolls. And we were so excited to see this car. And all of a sudden now we take a little test drive around the neighborhood and we're like, oh my God, we got a car, doesn't have proper tags or, stickers or anything, but it runs, right? And so now we're cleaning it up, trying to make it nicer. And it's just this major accomplishment. But little did we know what was about to happen then, because about the time we got that car running, his friend calls from San Diego, Doug's friend, Jimmy. Jimmy calls up and says, hey, man, I was hoping you'd be in town because my mother's going to Hawaii for 2 weeks. And, why don't you come over? And he says, well, we don't really have any way to come over there. And I said, yeah, we do. We got a car. And he goes, we got to cross the Mojave Desert. we can't go in that car. It's leaky. It ain't gonna make it. I said, yeah, it will. Yeah, it will. And so, you know, I convinced him. We fill this thing, the trunk. We fill the trunk with 1 gallon milk bottles full of water. All right. This thing doesn't even have any air conditioning. We can't cross the Mojave. If it was hot in Phoenix, you know, the Mojave Desert is about 10 or 15 degrees hotter. All right. The daytime, we couldn't. We could die out there, right? And so we cannot even leave Phoenix until about midnight. You know, 11, 12 o'clock we left. And we filled it with water and some provisions. And we take off. We tell his mom, hey, we're going to San Diego in the car. And we go out there, and it takes all night. It's like a 5 or 6 hour drive across the desert. And it's the sun's starting to come up. We have to stop this car about every 30 minutes to put water in it. And I mean, it's a broken down piece of junk, but it runs, you know. And so we take it over there, and we show up in San Diego at about 5 in the morning, and 5 or 6. And it's cool when you drop off the desert down into the San Diego Valley. All of a sudden, it's like air conditioning. I remember how the temperature dropped when we were going down, you know, down the mountains toward the beach. It was unbelievable how the climate just changed immediately. It was beautiful. And we come down, the sun's coming up, and we can see the Pacific Ocean, you know, from coming down the mountain. And it was amazing. You're on that high desert, and you drop down into the valley, and so we get to these people's house. This guy's name is Jimmy, and I don't know him from Adam. But we get to his house, and his nice mother is you know, she's all packed up, waiting for her taxi cab to go to the airport to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks. And we show up, and she's a sweet lady. And she says, oh, Doug, I'm Steve, nice to meet you. I'm so happy you're here. I'm a little worried about Jimmy. You know, I want to make sure that, you know, everything's okay while I'm gone. And, you know, it'd be nice if you boys stay here and you know, kind of look after him a little bit. And Doug says, oh, yes, ma'am, we will. And I said, you know, good morning, you know, we'll do the best we can. I know how to cook. She goes, oh, okay, you can be the cook, you know, and you guys can flip a coin for my master bedroom, and I win the toss. And I have the master bedroom for 2 weeks, all right? Now we're in this townhome, this luxury townhome in a nice part of San Diego, not far from Mission Beach. And she gets in her taxi cab and leaves, and she tells us, you know, the place is stocked with food, and, you know, be careful and try to look after her precious little Jimmy. All right. And so she takes off. We tell her goodbye and have a nice trip. And then Jimmy wakes up, and he goes, he opens the door. He's kind of this long-haired, hippie freak looking dude. And Jimmy, my grandmother would say Jimmy was wild as a March hare. All right. And Jimmy looks out into he hears her leave, you know, and about 10 minutes later, he opens the door and he goes, is she gone? And Doug's like, yeah, she's gone. How you doing? And he comes out, and Jimmy is wild. Jimmy immediately, you know, after we have breakfast, he gets to know me and blah, blah, blah. Jimmy starts calling his friends saying, hey, my mom's gone, come on over. And within, you know, half a day, this place is filling up with all of Jimmy's friends, all right, from San Diego. And this house turns into party central for the next 2 weeks, all right? And I have the master bedroom, and I'm like in the catbird seat. I'm the cook. I'm digging through. Jimmy's saying, hey, get whatever you can find. I mean, by the time we got through with that, every scrap of food, every drop of alcohol, everything that was consumable was gone. All right, and it was one 2-week animal house that went on there. And there were several people that they didn't even know, sort of travelers that were coming through, that were friends of a friend that heard there might be a place to sleep. There were people sleeping all over the living room and the couches, and in every nook and cranny. All right, and I had this master bathroom up there all to myself. I had to guard it. I put a sign on, and it actually had a locking key, so I could lock it. And it was great. It was like a sanctuary in the middle of this chaos. And there were these 2 English girls that I invited to stay with me. We didn't have any relations, but they were more than happy to share this giant king-size bed with me. And we got along famously. And Jenny and they were from England, from Cornwall, England. Their parents had a farm there. And anyway, so here I am living in this master bedroom with 2 English chicks. And I mean, it turned out to be one of the funnest, wildest, craziest times of my life. And it would have never happened. It would have never happened if we hadn't started working on that car. All right, there's no way that we would have probably gone out there and bought a plane ticket or whatever. Just wouldn't have happened. And so that was a metaphor for start with one thing and go to the next and go to the next. Perseverance. What is the definition of perseverance, by the way? Perseverance is to persist in anything undertaken, maintain a purpose in spite of difficulty, obstacles, or discouragement, and to continue steadfastly. That is perseverance. And Thomas Edison says, many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. And that's Thomas Edison. He's the guy that invented the light bulb and failed in 1,000 ways. And he didn't call them failures. He said, I succeeded in learning how not to make a light bulb. But he tried and tried and tried. And those lights you've got on right now are thanks to people like him who did not give up. But anyway, we didn't give up on that Ford Mustang, and we wound up at a 2-week party in San Diego. And that was the unexpected reward, the breakthrough that we got. It was all kinds of fun. And people came over. They took us to the beach, and we spent a lot of time at Mission Beach and other sites. I saw San Diego and La Jolla, and got this grand tour from all these different people that were showing up there. And made some friends. It was fun. I felt sorry for Jimmy's mother. I really did. She called. I woke up with a hangover one morning at about 7 o'clock. The phone was ringing in my ear, and I picked up the telephone, and it's Jimmy's mother. Hi, how you doing? I said, oh, hi. And she says, my plane just landed at the airport, and I'm going to be coming home in about an hour. And I just want to check and see how things are. And I said, oh, things are great, and she said, okay, we'll see you later. And so I hung up the phone, and I pick up the phone again. I called the taxi company and said, come over right away. And I packed my bag because I know all hell's going to break loose when his mother gets home. There are at least a dozen all over the place, maybe more. And I wake up Jenny and that other girl that was sleeping in the master bedroom, and we had maintained the master bedroom pretty good, but the rest of the house was chaos. All right. And I knew Mom wasn't going to be pleased. And so I had a taxi cab come and get me and take me to the airport. And I went and woke up Jimmy. I said, hey, man, your mom's coming home. And he was so hungover. He said, oh, yeah, okay, and went back to sleep. All right, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, I had delivered the message. I told Doug goodbye and got in a cab and left. And as we were leaving, her cab was coming down the street, and so I'm sure it was not pleasant from then on. As as she shook all those roaches out of the woodpile. But that's what happened in the summer of 1980, and it's because step by step, in the midst of a lot of obstacles and failures, we finally figured out how to get that car to run. And we were rewarded with a trip to San Diego, and it was really cool. It was really fun, so the moral of this story, boys and girls, is that you got to keep going. The greatest oak was once a little nut who held its ground. Perseverance. Whereas this other quote, believe in yourself, push your limits, experience life, conquer the goals, and be happy. No, that's not the one. Great difficulties may be surmounted by patience and perseverance. That's by Abigail Adams. I never dreamed of success. I worked for it. Well, I dream of success before I work for it. Helen Keller. We can do anything we want to do if we stick to it long enough. A river cuts through a rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence. It just keeps going and going and going. And here's Vince Lombardi. That's the one I was after. The difference between a successful person and others is not a lack of strength, not a lack of knowledge, but rather a lack of will. A lack of will. You have to have the will to persevere. Don't be discouraged. It's often the last key in the bunch that opens the lock. You ever had that? Where you're trying the lock, trying to open the lock. And it's the last key or the last tumbler of the combination. It opens the thing and you have a breakthrough. The door opens. You keep trying and trying. You keep moving in that direction. And, I'm reminded of this picture in my mind of a little terrier trying to get around a wall. And he's just curious all the time. Which way? How do I get around? Do I go over? Do I go around? Do I go under? He's hopping, he's jumping. And sooner or later, he finds a way, even if he has to dig under it. Think of Andy Dufresne in the movie Shawshank Redemption to dig through the wall of his cell to finally have even a chance of breaking out. And also in Animal House, the movie Animal House, when John Belushi is on this roll, everybody's discouraged. They're getting kicked out of college, and they're all depressed. And he goes, nothing's over till it's over. What happened when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? And his buddies go, the Germans? And they say, yeah, forget it. He's on a roll. And he talks about not giving up. It's not over till we say it's over. And, so perseverance, man, perseverance. It's an attitude. It's infectious. And it's not hard. I mean, it's not easy to muster sometimes when the chips are down. But work the problem. Apollo 13, when they've sent their astronauts out into space, and the spaceship is almost blown up. It's cooked, and they've got to figure out a way to get it back before these guys die of suffocation. And Ed Harris, who's one of my favorite actors, he's saying, work the problem, people, and just stop panicking. Everybody shut up and work the problem. And working the problem, staying with it. What is your goal? What do you want? What do you want? What do you envision in your mind? How is life supposed to be? And it is from that spirit. It's not the left brain logical is not going to get you there by itself. In the face of difficulty, it is the right brain intuitive that gives vision and strength and fortitude to the left brain logical that carries it out step by step. And it is that that will, that desire that comes from deep in the soul when the body is tired. General Patton said the body always wants to quit. The mind must override the body. And I would add to that, it is the spirit that overrides the body. The spirit drives the body. That's just my take on it. It is that unkillable human spirit. And from where do we get that deeper well, that second wave? That they talk about in the marathon. When you're running that marathon, you hit about mile 18 of a 26 mile run. You hit about mile 18 or 19, you hit the wall. And you're either going to crash and burn right then and there, or you're gonna kick into the next gear, and that comes from the soul. In my opinion, you've got to draw on your strength. I talked the other day at some length about David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. This is the guy that had to go through Navy SEAL basic training 3 times in order to get that trident on his lapel. All right, that Navy SEAL trident. And by the way, if you ever see a military man, a Navy man, and he's wearing a trident pin on his lapel, man, he is somebody not to be messed with. All right, and in my opinion, you should pay him the highest respect, because he has been through some shit, baby. He's been through a tough time in order to get that. He has persevered, and from where do you get that? From where do you get the ability to override the body? To override the pain, the stress, the discouragement, the difficulty, and physical endeavors. I'm trying to get more in shape these days, but it is not easy. The body does want to quit. It does give you these signals. No, you're in pain. No, you're going to hurt me. No, I'm going to break down. I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to blow a knee. I'm going to, whatever. My back hurts. You're destroying me. You're getting all these messages, and you've got to be able to overcome that. And I believe that comes from the spirit of the thing, from the desire, that desire. When you form something in your mind that you want, and you have a vision, but on top of that, you lay a rich desire for what it is you want, and you have it burning in your soul. What do I want? And it's like, I find mine is like a flickering light bulb. It stays shining sometimes, but in this endeavor with this live stream, I'll tell you, the light bulb flickers, baby, and it is an art form to keeping the light bright, to keeping the motivation and the forward drive and the creativity and all those things, keeping that light bulb on and bright all the time is an art form. It's an art form that is worth practicing. And so how do you do that? Well, if I start to feed this body the wrong thing, this temple of the spirit, if I start to feed it the wrong thing, which I frequently do, it starts to falter, right? And so I have to feed it the proper fuel, the proper air. Learn breathing exercises. This is a good thing, and I have avoided that for years, really. I know how to breathe when I'm running and stuff like that, but to sit still in place and learn how to breathe. I had this girlfriend one time, and she got a whole master's degree on breathing. At the time, I thought this was weird, and it was like one of those woo-woo type of degrees. But you know what? There's a lot to breathing, Breathing deliberately, deeply, rhythmically. There's something to that. Look into it. And I'm a novice at this, but stretching and moving and preparing, making the machine the highest and best that it can be. This is an art form worth practicing. Not consuming all the time, but creating, and we consume. What I mean by that is, how many hours a week do you spend sitting back in front of your screen just being a consumer? How often do you do that? How many hours do you spend doing that? Because I am guilty of hanging around. If any of you look at my Facebook page, I spend quite a bit of time, finding cute, interesting, motivational, inspiring type stuff, natural stuff that people will like, and I repost it. And instead of creating my own content, I repost other people's content. And I like doing that. It's fun. But I spend too much time doing that. And I spend probably too much time kicking back, watching interesting Facebook videos, not Facebook, but YouTube videos. And I get a lot out of it. I get a lot out of it. I hope you get something out of this. But if you're not spending a certain portion of your day, and you can start small, but creating, being a creator, all right, and developing this natural temple of the spirit, and allowing that spirit to shine as bright as possible, not consuming garbage, and not giving up with that, because it's easy to take up the rocking chair, as Augustus McCrae would say. I got one more adventure to take before I take up the rocking chair, right? And that's what he said, when he's going on that cattle drive, and his old lady friend, Angelica Houston, in this is the movie Lonesome Dove, and they get to Ogallala, and she says, Gus, why are you going all the way up to Montana where the Indians can kill you? It just doesn't make any sense. And he goes, well, I know it don't, but me and Woodrow, we want to have one more adventure before we take up the rocking chair. And how are you going to go out, baby? How is this thing going to end for you? All right? How big are you going to show up? Or are you just going to take up the rocking chair, turn on the tube, and pour yourself a cool one every day? There is a creative drive in everyone. Sometimes it's covered up with a lot of things, a lot of discouragement, a lot of consumption, and a lot of belief systems that you can't, or that you shouldn't, or that it's evil, or it's wrong, or, it's unrealistic. I love that one. But what is it going to be for you? No one can sing your song. No one can write your story. No one can dance your dance, all right? It's you, yourself. And you are a unique flower growing in this field, and you are a part of the whole thing. And tick tock, baby. Time's running out. All right. How much more time do we have? All right. And while you're here, sometimes I have the ailment of saying it's too late. I'm too old. I can't. I wish I could have done it when I was younger. That's bullshit. Okay. It's just your mind messing with you. All right. I shouldn't be cussing online. But yeah. Snap out of it. Hey, feels good. Feels alive. I heard a quote that, and I think it was Alan Watts that said, I don't think people are looking for the meaning of life so much as they're looking for the feeling of being alive. The feeling of being alive. And there's nothing that will make you quite so alive as achieving the different steps that will climb the mountain of your dreams. Nothing will make you feel so good as to achieve that which you have envisioned and create a life that Tony Robbins says is a masterpiece. Creating your own unique masterpiece. That is the greatest drug of all, the greatest high of all. And sharing it with your fellow man, bringing them along the way, helping them achieve their dreams, and to raise their spirit as high as it can possibly go, beyond their wildest dreams. And that is satisfaction, going where you need to go and helping others raise to where they need to go. And in doing so, surprise, surprise, you raise the vibration of humanity and of this planet, because we are all connected. Everything is energy. Everything is vibration and frequency. And when you raise your own personal internal frequency, and it comes up stronger and stronger like a nuclear freaking power plant, all right, and it raises a certain energy, pretty soon there's enough for you, and then it radiates out to everybody else. And this is what I'm trying to achieve for myself, to raise my vibration to its highest level. And it will make you feel stronger and younger, and I believe it will ward off all manner of disease, whether that be physical or mental. It will ward off the lower elements that are trying to bring you down, the lower conversations, the lower relationships, the lower habits. When you're raising your internal vibration to such a degree, you start to become immune from these things, these habits that are bringing you down. They will no longer please you. They are no longer satisfying, because what is most satisfying is that high vibration, when you're bringing up the pitch to its best proper thing, and you project an image. You actually access the broader bandwidth. All right, and when I say stuff like that, I was talking to my mother about vibration the other day, and she's like, "Come on, vibration, higher frequency. I mean, what's that all about? Why not, let me pour you a glass of wine, honey." And I'm gonna say it again and again. It's easy for people to understand that this works on invisible waves. This works in all kinds of ways on invisible energy waves. They're floating around all around us, Now they're trying to pump 5G in there. I believe it's interference for our natural vibration. But it's easy to believe this operates on invisible waves, but people find it hard to believe that this operates on invisible waves. And if you can figure out how it works, you can access a higher bandwidth. You can access a broader understanding. You can access a greater heart energy that when you've gotten this balance, and it's not so dominant left brain logical, brings about a balance. The intuition raises, the small still voice, the voice of God, the inner child, that awareness of higher things. And if you scoff at that, then answer me how a man can be struck by lightning and suddenly play and write symphony quality music like Chopin. All right, how does this happen? How is it a man is hit on the head and he can do advanced math, or someone has a stroke and they can speak fluent Japanese? These are real things. They're called acquired Savant syndrome. All right, they access information from infinity. All right, and suddenly they can do these things. This is, I believe, what will happen to all human beings in the second coming of Christ. All right, and the second coming of the Christ consciousness. And as we each individually raise our own vibration to in our own resonance, our own frequency, And we do all those things deliberately that we're supposed to do in order to optimize our vibration, then we will be able to access the higher, more sublime frequencies. All right. Now we can only get, sort of the normal mid-range bandwidth. But if we do those things, and doing those things that go out of the left brain logical, the dancing, chanting, drumming, meditation, knowledge of plant medicines with skilled guides, and all those things, contemplative prayer, the movement, dance, music, all these things that bring about a higher vibration in human beings and sustain it. To sustain it, and that takes practice. It's art, and it's worth studying. I'm no expert. All I know is that I'm onto it, and it feels good. And what Tony Robbins said at this seminar was, with regard to nutrition, he says, nothing tastes better than good health feels. Nothing tastes better than good health feels. And let me put a finer point on that. Nothing feels better than consuming and practicing the proper things. If you are constantly looking at these horrible, violent videos of people beating each other up, I mean, all of a sudden my Facebook feed is flooded with people being mean to each other. Turn that stuff off immediately. Do not watch it, right? Do not feed into this. It's just horrible. And I know it's a problem, but God Almighty, you do not need to sit and watch people beating each other up. These people who sit and watch cage fighting and stuff like that, where people are just hammering each other all day, this is not good. This is not good. It's not raising your vibration. It's keeping you in a lower anger, fight or flight, fear-based type of vibration. And lighten up, man. Lighten up, and let that come down. Turn off those videos, and create something. And it's very important, in my opinion, to be in nature, and also to take off your shoes and walk in the grass barefooted. Just like on that movie Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. She sits him down in the park, and she takes off his shiny business shoes, peels off his socks, and makes him put his feet in the grass. All right? Take off your shoes and wiggle your toes in that grass. It's important. It's called grounding or earthing. And there's an electromagnetic thing that happens when you touch your bare feet to the bare earth, and it's healthy, and you should do it routinely. I don't do it enough, but all these things are important, and if we go back to a time where we can learn from indigenous people, I believe we'll be healthier and happier and a much more harmonious earth. Our vibration, we're in the midst of a big upheaval. And the good news about it, in my opinion, is that the diamond is formed under heat and pressure. And a metamorphosis occurs when there is heat and pressure of different kinds. In my own spiritual walk, I was under all kinds of heat and pressure when we came back from Peru, and I was thrust into this dog-eat-dog business world of Houston, Texas, and I didn't know what to do, and I had trouble in my marriage, problems with my church, problems in my career. I mean, I was just to a point where I was so emotionally battered. I was sitting quietly at 3 o'clock in the morning in my living room, just not thinking about anything. And that is a good place to be, by the way. That's a good place to be, because once you give up and say, you know what, I just don't know. I just don't know. And I'm willing to sit still and be okay with that. All right. And when you do that, something magic happens, because you're willing to accept that you don't know. And the minute that you tell yourself, you know what, I'm lost. You know what happens? All of a sudden your radar kicks on, and it starts opening itself for new possibilities. And the heat and pressure, somehow you reach a point as an individual or as a society that something can break open and a new revolution can occur. And I think that's what's happening in our world. I really do. We're coming to it's all coming to a head. And it may be difficult for a while, but I believe that in the tremendous possibility here that something beautiful is going to happen, and I believe it's going to be this second coming of Christ consciousness, that which Christ had, that which Buddha had, that which many of these spiritual teachers have had and have told us that we have. Christ told us, "Do ye not know that ye are gods?" Do you not know this? Do you not know that you're a god? All right, and that you are a part of the Godhead. You are not just a drop from the ocean. You are connected to the ocean, the universe. You are a part of it all, and so I encourage you to find this connection with the divine. Find it. And my church has certainly given me a lot of reasons to follow that direction. But at the end of the day, it is up to you and your intuition, your personal experience with that which we call God or higher power, the universe, what have you. And I believe that we all seek this. We all instinctively know it's there, even though there are many people that deny it. But you know, when I was in that storm out in the North Atlantic and this big old ship was sinking its bow under the ocean for 3 days in 35, 40-foot swells, every man on that ship, in one way or another, I heard him cry out to God. And they came from all walks of life, and some of them were pretty tough, hard old, sailors. And so I encourage you, to find your connection with the divine. Allow that left brain logical to come down just a bit. Find ways to soften, and find ways to allow that right brain intuitive. Get yourself a copy of The Artist Way by Julia Cameron, and follow the instructions in that book. Do the morning pages, just random writing, allowing the brain to flow freely, and it will lead you places that are unexpected. So I encourage you. I love you. As usual, I've forgotten time. Time does not exist. After the first 10 or 15 minutes of this live stream, for me, time doesn't exist, and it moves by very quickly, and that's what happens when you get into a flow state of consciousness, when you let the left brain logical go, when you're not afraid of what the reaction will be. You simply tell the honest, authentic truth that comes to you. And if we could do that, if we could all do that with each other without a fear of what people might think, that we're weird or crazy, just think of the information we could share with each other. And I've seen amazing things when I'm honest and forthright with people. And so I love you very, very much. And I'm going to give it to you straight any way I know how. And remember this, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing badly in the beginning. It's worth looking ridiculous to try to move forward another notch towards your vision and your dream. Try it. Try something. All right? And keep trying. And so I love you. This is Stevie the Guide here on the banks of the Guadalupe River in Kerrville, Texas. And I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. I love you. Bye-bye.